Peter, what are the 3 biggest mistakes estate agents make? Talk to me.
So, if we look at it from a business perspective, first and foremost, I think the first and principal mistake that estate agents make is not adapting their service levels to what is required today. Back in my early days, when I started in the industry, estate agents were the owners of the knowledge. People couldn't get it other than from us. I remember we used to put stickers over, if a property is sold for a particularly good price, we would mark it up as sold subject to contract in the window, and we would deliberately have the sticker positioned in such a way that you could see the price underneath it. And people would come in and they would go, oh gosh, I see that one sold, yes. What did it sell for? And we used to say, I'm afraid I'm not allowed to tell you that, but I can tell you it got very close to the asking price. Now, I mean, I look back at those days and it just seems ridiculous in terms of the information that's available. So the whole model has fundamentally changed, and estate agents being, if you like, the go-to for information. They're no longer the go-to for information.
It's all there with Rightmove, land registry, data coming out your ears.
It is. And again, some people may watch this, may argue and say, well, some of it is flawed and some of it is, outdated, or some of it isn't appropriate, and they may well be right. But by the way, so too estate agents' advice back in the day as well. So, ultimately, the consumer, I think most people would agree, is better informed today than ever before. So the first thing to realise, the first mistake estate agents make, is to hark back to the good old days and try to put the genie back in the bottle, because it isn't going to happen, right? They're never again going to be the go-to for pure data stroke expertise. That's number one. The second mistake that I think that too many make is, we've talked about this in another video, is about being transactional rather than looking to be trusted. Focusing too much on deals for them and focusing too much on the here and now, the short-termism, rather than understanding that they're going to be there for 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years as a business. Take a longer-term view. Sure, you've got to keep the home fires burning in the immediate term. I get that. But if you look at the way in which you're marketing yourself and providing your service, think about having a chunk for here and now, and then a bigger chunk, in my opinion, for down the road that will yield you a better dividend.
What kind of things would you spend your money on those sort of things?
So it's relationship management. It would be making sure that I call every single one of my past clients at least twice a year and have a conversation with them on their terms. So I don't just phone them up willy-nilly. I've prepared the phone conversation. I've done my research. I contact you with clear purpose. Chris, it's been 6 months since we spoke. Last time we spoke, you said that everything was great in the house and so on and so forth. Is that still the case? Or is there anything I could help you with?
Because in the recent survey by the Property Academy, you said 57% of homeowners and landlords would be really interested in finding out what's happening in the property market and things like that. Do you think that's a good way to spend money?
They are, but they're interested really, fundamentally, in what's happening in their property
market.
Right. Their property market is their property. I mean, a similar one on the same street maybe, but they're not interested in what's going on in
the UK,
or even in the whole of SW5 where we're currently sitting. They're interested in their street and their property type and what's it worth today and so on. So there is that, but also it can be down to things. So one of the things I'm saying to a lot of our members at the moment is be helpful, be useful. So 2 days ago, I'm sitting in my garden at the end of a long day. I am having a glass of beer in the sunshine, and it's very pleasant. But I look up and I go, oh my God. I look at the exterior of my house, and boy, it needs painting. There's nowhere, and it really needs sorting out. So where do I go to? I'm in a new area. I only moved there 18 months ago. Who do I go to? I tell you who I go to. I'm going to the estate agent who sold it to me, because I know he will be able to recommend to me a really good decorator.
Because he or she's been contacting them every 6 months. How are you doing?
Exactly. And being helpful. Now, if you've got a property management business, you should know all these contractors. And by the way, there may be an earning opportunity out of it as well. But that is an aside, just to be helpful and to be that go-to person. To give. And then when they're ready, right? And by the way, a lot of times people delay moving because they're misinformed about actually what is involved and the cost of what are involved. And suddenly you say to them, you do know that interest rates at the moment are X, Y, Z. Really? Well, I can make that move. Absolutely, you can make that move. So it's about having a conversation, but with their interests at heart. So that's the second thing.
And the third thing?
So I think the third mistake that I'm seeing currently at the moment is still treating customers in their different pigeonholes. So I coined the phrase the four-dimensional customer about 10 years ago now, and I believed then, I still believe now, that treating people differently depending on how they show up is fundamentally wrong. You know, I'm a landlord, I'm a property owner, I was a buyer 18 months ago, I was a tenant 18 months ago before I bought. In the last 18 months, I've been all four. And depending on how I show up to an estate agent, still to this day, will determine how I'm treated. And it's staggering to me that we treat people differently depending on their current tenure of status.
Interesting, I was talking to Tom from Goodlord, and he said we should look after tenants a lot more.
Yeah,
what fits in with what you're saying.
Well, I remember having a brilliant marketer called Peter Fisk speak at one of our events 10 years ago, and he said then it's about tenants rather than landlords, and I think actually there's been several brands that have had a much more tenant focus to their business. And that's so Neil Young, for example, who founded Young Property, sold it to Countrywide, but he had an unbelievable focus on tenants. Now he attracted tenants, corporate tenants, who sought him out, who actually sought out properties that they were letting. Now, what do you think happened to the prices when you've got absolute prime corporate tenants? Because they knew that they would be looked after brilliantly all the way through the process. And these were sort of, this was in London. It was sort of the banks and the big sort of, city type companies who didn't want their people that they were relocating to have to worry about getting the washing machine fixed or the boiler sorted. They just wanted them to move in and get working. Anyway, my point is that I think the four-dimensional customer is really important. And this is where actually a lot of the time the databases of certain systems are unhelpful because they're fragmented. You've got your landlords and tenants in one, sometimes in separate ones. You've got your buyers and sellers in another. The two don't talk. The team structures, similarly in a lot of businesses, don't enable that dialogue to happen. And literally, a landlord who is selling a property could phone up and find a completely different person who's got no knowledge of the fact that they're a customer in a different part of the business.
Because they're a different pigeonhole and a different part of the business.
So that would be my third area, which is still, I think, a big issue that agents need to get their heads around.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Cheers.